I had pretty high hopes for the pasture around here in the first season. After watching a few areas over the last week, I have noticed that the grass that I thought was going to be fine is actually cheatgrass. Cheatgrass is an invasive type of brome that has seed heads that dry out and get very spiky and stuck in the horse's teeth and gums. While I was on my rounds checking the pasture grass this afternoon, I noticed that Sparkler had a few new friends.
Sparkler girl. Sparkler.
Our neighbors don't have any horses, but that doesn't mean that there won't be a few showing up from time to time. It's pretty common to lease out smaller pastures and let livestock eat them down in this area.
Boy, Whip. What's going on, Pete?
Since this is the first day I've noticed some horses along our fence line, I better go up and double check to make sure there are no holes or loose pieces of wire, because you guys know I've been finding that kind of stuff all over the place. Here lately, because it is starting to green up, I've been getting a lot of questions about when the horses are going to go out on real pasture. If you ignore for a minute the fact that I'm still finding random wire and metal in the pasture, and we do have quite the prairie dog hole situation, one of my main concerns is making sure the grass is healthy enough and mature enough to support the horses. While there are patches around the ranch that the horses could definitely graze, for the most part, the pastures are significantly run down. Right now, of course, we're having a historic drought, so I'm not 100% sure what the irrigation situation is going to look like. One of the reasons we waited so long to buy a property is because we wanted to have some pretty serious water rights. We are pretty lucky that our property has a significant slope to it, so naturally it does get a lot of runoff water. Sparkler was making a little bit of a stink when she first noticed the new horses across the fence line, but she's pretty chill and settled down in about a half an hour. Even with her being in heat right now, she is not too crazy with new horses close. The fence between our property and the neighbors on this side is, I think, 4 or 5 strands of barbed wire. Not something that I would ever let my horses go out on, but in this area of the country, it's pretty common to have barbed wire to control horses and cattle. While I was checking the fence, I ran into our neighbor and we had a little chat about the irrigation. Our head gate is actually on their property, so if I want the water turned on, I have to talk to them. Water rights in Colorado are very complicated. Even on this property, there are several different ways we can get water. We have shares of water from a big reservoir. We have different ditch rights. And although we do have a well, it does not produce hardly any water right now. After chatting with our neighbor and visiting with the water commissioner, we are getting our head gate opened a tiny little bit. It won't be enough water to do any serious irrigating, but it will allow me to check all of the little ditches that are dug around the property.
Oh, my. Hello.
It is very distracting trying to resist the urge to snuggle this guy every 5 minutes.
Time for breakfast.
I haven't settled on a name for him quite yet, but I think I have it.
Hello. Good morning. Oh, you're a turd.
He still is continuing to change pretty much daily. Typically in the morning I feed Prim some of her hard feed, and usually she does not let this guy out of her sight, but I'm thinking that she's starting to grow tired of him.
Scratch. Getting into trouble.
He is definitely a rambunctious little guy, and every morning he has to go out and stretch his legs. Last week he was being a little bit too aggressive while I was in his pen, and I spent more time on the other side of the panel than in with him.
Careful, careful, slow down, buddy.
I spend about 5 minutes every morning with him, and then in the evening about 15. Prim trusts me enough to watch her little baby that she doesn't get too excited when he leaves her sight now. That has given me an opportunity to teach him a few manners that he's going to need before I get his halter on. But for the most part, this guy just likes to run around and show me all of his sweet moves.
Oh. Whoa. Get that booty out of here. Careful, Huckleberry. You better watch it, buddy.
One thing that I've been working on this past week is letting this guy understand a few boundaries. His exuberance for play sometimes results in him acting in a way that is not appropriate around humans. With his new little teeth, he does try and nibble on me a little bit. Whenever he tries to take a chunk out of me or gets too close with his rear end, I just give him a little push away. It really hasn't taken him too long to figure out what is appropriate around humans and what is not.
Okay, Primmy. No, sir.
I'm pretty sure Prim is about recovered from her traumatizing birth experience. Up until now, she's been pretty distracted with this little dude, but she's feeling more and more confident letting him venture farther from her side. He's getting very curious, and pretty soon here, I'm going to want to get him out into a different area so he can run a bit more. One of his new favorite moves is to jump backwards and buck, and I think this is a result of me pushing him away when he gets too close to me and does it. He's proven to be a pretty smart little dude already. Ivar seems pretty interested in the water that's running around here, so after I feed the horses breakfast, we are going to go over and check out the irrigation.
Just want to be friends with that baby. He is very cute, Ziggo. Boy, Zig. Couple months ago. Boy.
I've noticed just in the last couple of days, Prim has allowed Ziggy and the new baby to meet each other over the fence. The little one is just tall enough to get his nose over the edge. I had a bunch of other plans for today, but it looks like I am going to be doing some investigating on our irrigation ditches. I've shown you guys around a lot so far, but I want to get you better acquainted with what we've got going on around here. I'm really lucky that I've had quite a bit of experience with irrigating in the past, but I've never used ditches. With our new well, we will have irrigation as well. It's a pretty small amount. We're only allowed to use it to irrigate an acre, which is basically our yard. But that should be more than enough to make sure none of those really spiky weeds start growing and get into Huckleberry's paws.
Okay. Let's go.
It's pretty hard down to equate the amount of water that we have coming into the property on the amount of land that it will cover.
Sorry, Huckleberry.
Most of that does rely on the effectiveness of the ditches that are dug.
You're right, Tiny. We forgot our shovel.
Currently, there are a few ditches here and there that I've kind of got an idea of where they're supposed to irrigate. Yesterday, all day when the water was turned on, I allowed it to run on just a single ditch that I'm pretty sure is the most used.
What are you doing over there? I'm gonna pick you up. Come here. Oh, so sweet. So sweet. Come on.
I had been letting the horses out to graze a little bit, but I rearranged the boys and now they're back to getting hay since I do have quite a few large bales left. In addition to being a little bit disappointed about the amount of cheatgrass around here, I'm also getting together a plan for where the old tires were. The area needs to be tested and mitigated so I'm not irrigating toxic chemicals into all of our pastures. This little field above the old homestead pasture did have some irrigation running all night, and it looks like for the most part it has just gone down the prairie dog holes. This pipe runs off of one of the irrigation ditches and you kind of set it up and then use gravity to do the work for you. It's not super efficient, but it does get the water out a bit farther away from the ditches. There's a little bit of grass growing here, so I'm going to set this up and let it run for a little while today and then move it around again. One of the things I really wanted to see before I decided on where the horses' dry lots are going to go is where the irrigation runs. I want to make sure I am not putting a dry lot where it would be really easy to irrigate and get some good grass going. I pretty much had my mind made up that the horses were going to get their dry lots in this little area, but after seeing the irrigation run, I might have to switch it up a little bit. This is one of the main ditches, and as you can see, it is not very deep and it's pretty overgrown with grass. Here is how the water runs into the little pipes. It looks like while I was adjusting it, it came out of its little trough. There's a whole pile of these pipes set up around the property. There's even some that are buried underground. The amount of water that's flowing right now is basically a trickle, so it's not going to do much irrigating. It has been on long enough now that I can see what work needs to be done on this ditch. There's some remnants that the irrigation on this property used to be a bit more managed. This is an old headgate that is obviously not working anymore. It would sit in one of the ditches, and when you wanted to close it off and direct the water somewhere else, that is how you would do it. Since we don't have any headgates or downstream users after the water hits our property, we can pretty much change the ditches however we want. There's one that should do a lot of good for the dry spots on the property, but there may be a reason that it's been out of use so long. It looks like it goes right through that giant willow tree. And today my main task is going to be redirecting this water and finding out if it actually works. In the past, I've used irrigation systems that have a pump and basically giant sprinklers. This property is too steep to use a wheel line, and we'd have to put in quite a bit of infrastructure if we wanted to pressurize our water. For now, moving around tarps and redirecting the water with the help of gravity is going to be our best bet, although it does require a little bit of elbow grease. This area definitely needs to be cleaned out, but for today I'm just using a regular hand shovel to get the stream redirected. We have a pretty low flow today, so hopefully I'll be able to bring the water level high enough by blocking some of the other ditches to get it going down here.
think I see him. Ivar!
It looks like Ivar is off on a little adventure on the neighbor's property this morning. After some serious rearranging, it looks like I have the tarps set up to where I'm getting a good enough flow down this abandoned ditch that I can see if it's going to work for us.
Let's go,
This
girl.
little trickle of water is a lot less than we'll see when we actually order part of our water shares for the year.
Ivar!
Compared to the other ditch, this one has obviously not been used in quite a long time. Instead of lush grass lining it, it basically just has weeds and rocks. The pasture that's next to it is pretty parched and filled with prairie dog holes, a lot of weeds, and some cheatgrass. Over the last couple weeks, I've been digging out a lot of weeds. I'm hoping that when the water gets down to this culvert, it doesn't just run down the prairie dog hole. I'm also really hoping that it will be open enough to at least let some water run through.
Where's Ivar?
While these pipes should work for now, it's something that's on my list to completely redo with the tractor. That's probably going to be a task for the fall unless they're completely clogged.
Inspect. Is it clogged?
Tiny loves going through these ditches, and it's even too clogged for her to check it out.
Not a clog.
If we get water going through this pipe, the next hurdle is going to be getting past this old willow tree. This is the big one on the property that has definitely been struck by lightning. There are tons of old branches that need to be cleaned up. Unfortunately, there are a few of them that are holding up some pretty suspicious limbs. I'm worried if I cut down all of the dead material, then the tree is actually going to fall down. It's pretty cool back here, but I definitely need to clean up this log jam so the water has somewhere to go. I think during times of a lot of rainfall, it probably still flows a little bit through here, but it definitely hasn't been used for irrigating in quite a long time. Past the willow tree, this really shallow ditch is pretty clogged with rocks, sticks. There's tons of prairie dog holes. If it makes sense to get out here with the tractor, I can definitely do some cleanup. There are lots of rocks, so it might be a little bit tricky to maneuver. I do think that this ditch is good enough to just test it out and see how it runs. Compared to what we've got going on around that other ditch, this one is pretty desolate and dried up. We've got another pipe that seems a bit more clogged than the one before the willow tree. It's kind of a bummer that this ditch has not been used in so long because it runs right down basically the spine of the property, and it would be perfect to run and irrigate basically everything. Prairie dogs love to have a high vantage point, and since this ditch has been out of use for so long, they have moved into this area. This spot has the best view, and it's one of the areas that we were thinking about putting a barn on. There are 4 main ditches on this property, and they all run straight downhill, which is not very efficient. The amount of slope on the property makes it perfect for putting in some swales. You can tell at one point there were a few dug that have remained and turned into little offshoots of the main irrigation. From that one ditch running all night, you can see there are lots of prairie dog holes that have been flooded out. This ditch runs right past the horses' dry lots and then basically just runs right into the tamarisk trees. I would very much prefer that all of our water go to making the pasture grass grow instead of this invasive tree. There are a few little pipes set up to redirect this water, but again, it's not doing its job very well. After running all night, this ditch has basically emptied all of its water into this bunch of tamarisk trees. There's some pretty well established grass from this runoff, but again, I would prefer if the horses had more to eat. This is one of the areas where I'm going to have to do some redirecting. I have experience in redirecting irrigation flow on properties like this. And with the little tractor, it shouldn't be hard to get a few little tests going. I've been focusing a lot of my time recently around the main homestead building. I've walked the property a ton of times, but I'm always uncovering something new. This main ditch really appears to be a place where the natural runoff just collects. It looks like this ditch is good at moving a lot of water right off the property, which is the exact opposite of what we want. It is preferable that all of the water we're allowed to have stays on the property as long as possible so it can water the grass. While I wait for the next ditch over to fill up, I'm going to dig just a tiny little trench here to try and redirect some of this flow. There's definitely some evidence that water sits along here. I thought I'd just be able to dig out this grass pretty easily with my sharp shovel. I'm not 100% sure on what kind of grass this was, but it was extremely hard to dig up. Hopefully now when the irrigation is on, it will bypass this tamarisk patch. It doesn't look too terrible, but I've been finding some pretty noxious weeds. Hound's tongue is one of the worst for horses, so I definitely need to get rid of these before they go out on the pasture. Pretty much all of the areas next to the main ditches that have been in use recently do have a bit of grass growing around them. I'll show you guys a side by side so you can see what a ditch that has been in use looks like. And then I'll go back over to the one we're trying to get running today. Willow trees do consume quite a bit of water, so it might be that even if this ditch does get flowing, it has a lot of water that does not make it down to the other half of the property. That is something that I really want to find out for myself, so I do have to do some cleanup so the water can start flowing again. I'll have to go back and look on the aerial views to see if I can tell when this tree was hit by lightning, but I am guessing that it has been this way for a very long time. There is a possibility that the ditch that was running last night was made to replace this one. I, of course, don't have to use any of the ditches that are already here. I can redig anything I want and make it flow with the landscape better. But I am only one person and I want to get as much done this summer as possible. So it may be beneficial to start using the ditches that are already present and make them work for a short amount of time. While it would be really nice to just toss the horses out on the pasture and have them graze, I'm going to have to manage it pretty carefully in order to bring it back to life. There are patches around that need something growing. It really doesn't matter what. In order to gather up all of the water that we're allocated and save it on the property, the ideal situation would be to have grass established. The irrigation will be used more efficiently, and any runoff from natural rain will also be put to good use. If I turn the horses out on what little grass we already have, it will probably have a detrimental effect to my plan for the summer. Depending on how these existing ditches pan out, it may be possible for me to put up temporary fence along the edges so the horses can graze the established grass, because they definitely cannot go out on anything that I reseed this year. There's a lot of doom and gloom around the drought situation this year, and I want to make sure I don't inadvertently kill the grass that's already established. We do have another ditch on the property that has a separate head gate to turn on. This is another ditch that looks like it has not been used in years and years. I've already removed about 6 full-grown cottonwood trees from blocking its path. This one also does have a lot of old wood and stumps piled up in it. I think that is a pretty common practice to try and stop the flow of water and let it settle into the ground. It seems like a good idea, but I don't think it works.
Tiny! Are you in your tree? It's a good tree for a cat. Be careful.
A ditch that hasn't been used in a really long time is going to soak up a lot more water than one that is established.
Are you kidding me? Tiny! Oh, that's too high.
With Tiny's supervision, I started very carefully cutting apart the dead parts of this tree. There are a few branches that are obviously dead, but they're supporting a lot of the weight of this tree. This old willow has a ton of character, and I'd like to keep its fallen down branches if they're stable enough to stay. Luckily, all of the ones that are blocking the ditch can be cut up and removed.
What are you doing? This is dangerous, Tiny. Hey, Tiny.
Tiny doesn't stray very far from the old homestead building, and she was pretty excited to explore a new tree today.
Tiny.
This willow tree is so big that if I do get it cleaned up enough, the horses could probably go out here and be relatively safe. This is the tree that I have taken Sparkler to, and we've walked underneath the branches. But with all of these downed logs and sticks, for me to turn the horses out on a part of the ditch and have them eat this grass, I do need to do a lot of cleanup.
Tiny, where are you?
Tiny did slow me down a bit today with her exploration, but eventually I did get it all cleared out, and I could see that this ditch runs right around the roots of this willow tree. I was really hoping that the flow would be strong enough to move some of these old sticks and bark pieces, but it is just really a trickle right now. In addition to all of the dead plant matter, there are some live weeds growing in the way as well. Lots of dead branches overhead that I had to be careful of. I was also starting to get a little bit hungry because I've been out here for a while. I really wanted to get a pretty good flow going before I went to lunch, so I was going back and forth unclogging all of the little pieces of bark. I pulled out some of the grass, and there are a few roots that were getting in the way. I can see now why this ditch was probably out of commission.
Hideaway? Is that a little patch of nip? What are you doing? It's just grass? You're crazy.
Tiny got pretty excited when we finally got the ditch going at a relatively normal pace. For the amount of flow we have going, this is probably as fast as it's gonna go. We really don't have too far to get to the next culvert, but it is definitely slower going than I had anticipated. It looks like the water is running right along, but as soon as it hits any kind of debris, it goes to a complete standstill and starts soaking into the ground. The type of soil we have out here is perfect for making quicksand, so really these ditches, you do not want the water standing in it. Between our property line and where our head gate is at the neighbor's house, there's actually quite a few places where the ditch is 4 or 5 feet deep through the silt. It's pretty dangerous, and it's really important to keep these things flowing, so I'm going to try my best to get this all washed out by the end of the day. There were a few spots that needed to be dug out, but for the most part it was able to flow on its own. I really didn't want to stop working until this culvert was unclogged, so I grabbed a bite to eat and got the tractor. I was pleasantly surprised to see that at least there was a little bit of water trickling through this culvert. With the help of the tractor, I dug out a new tiny ditch where the old existing one was. The flow is still not that great, but I think for a day's work, this was not too shabby. This ditch is going to have water flowing in it all night long, and hopefully it'll make its way down to the end of the property. I have noticed though that there is a lot of water just soaking into the ground. I'm going to let this run for a few hours and then come back and check on it later in the day. Over the last couple of hours, the water has come down and carved its way out through the old existing ditch. We're definitely losing a lot of water just soaking up into the ground. And I was pretty bummed to see that over the last couple hours, we only got about 50 feet. I think this little project is going to turn out needing a lot more work than I had initially anticipated. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.